What's going on, everybody? And today we have a crazy discussion to go over as it pertains to NFL Week 18. So basically, a lot of storylines to follow here, and I'm going to go over every single one of them. First, big segment draft pick hot potato. It seemed like, I guess we'll talk about the first game related to this. Panthers versus Falcons. You have the Falcons trying to make a playoff push here at the end of the season. Slim chance, but if they win, there's still a possibility that they could take it home with a Buccaneers loss. So they're playing for everything, basically, a season on the line. And, it was a great game, but we didn't expect it to be. We should have an easy win here versus the Panthers. What ended up happening is the Panthers decided we're going to go out there and compete. And Bryce Young went God mode. And he was basically going out there and proving a lot of things, proving that, he's a guy that can perform. Over the last few weeks, he's been doing so, but especially this week was a statement win for him. It might not be so bad. He proved that to basically build around this guy. And you have Xavier Legette and Jatavion Sanders who need to show more. They're not necessarily going to be enough. Let's maybe get them one additional weapon in this draft. Let's get them an O-line as well. Chuba Hubbard has been amazing this season. And also, we have what we could potentially get a 1A, 1B out of Jonathan Brooks if he ends up panning out. But, we need a little bit more for them. And they basically showed this week that they have some of the tools necessary to invest in that. So they said basically, frick the draft positioning, we're going to go for the win. And they did. And Bryce Young performed amazingly in an overtime victory. Then we had the Bears game. They win to put them at 5-12 versus the Packers. Of course, they would have had a higher draft pick if they won the game. And the Packers, they were trying to enter the playoffs strong after a bad loss the previous week to the Vikings. Again, like Caleb Williams, in a similar situation to Bryce Young, showing that he's a guy that he's been solid all year, despite what the media is saying and comparing him to the other rookie quarterbacks. He's been stellar. His O-line could definitely use some work. He wouldn't have to escape as much, but, showing that he can go out there and compete as well, which wasn't as necessary as Bryce Young's performance was, but definitely showed that this week. And the Packers, they're now 1-5 in their division, I believe, and they have a lot of people questioning, what is this going to be when we enter the playoffs? Do we have enough? The answer, probably not, because when you're losing in a division like that, 5 losses to 1 win, that's not good looks entering the playoffs, especially down the stretch when you have 2 bad losses to end the year. And so we'll see whether or not they perform in the playoffs, but I think this is not their year, in my opinion. Overall, it just seemed like a lot of these teams, again, going back to draft pick hot potato, that they were supposed to be losers, and it would have benefited them to be losers this week. But they went into the week basically saying, no, I didn't get the memo personally about the draft picks, but we're going to go out there and just compete, and we're going to try and win, which is what probably happened all around, basically. We even had, even some of the people that did lose that were supposed to. For example, the Titans, they lost by 9 to the Texans, albeit it was Davis Mills, but, they were still going out there and trying to at least put on a show. And the Giants by 7 to the Eagles. Of course, they weren't really trying their hardest from the Philadelphia standpoint, but losing by 7, 1 score, that's still close. The Jags in a 3-point loss to the Colts, who are also, struggling this year as well a little bit. So, these teams basically, and it's wild to me because as a fan, I'm thinking that the players, if I was a player, for example, it's like, okay, if we think we've got some competitors right here, right? If I'm a player and I'm thinking I'd love to have a better draft pick, because if we got the Stones right now, imagine how good we could be with a guy like Travis Hunter or Will Johnson, like a playmaker like that. How good could we be at that point? That would be my thought process as a player, but of course I'm not one. Maybe my opinion would change if I was one. But the reality is, we're basically saying, yeah, these guys can make a difference if we got them in the draft, but the reality is that players a lot of times don't really care about tanking for a draft pick. At least that's what the commentators were saying throughout many of the games this week, and that's just surprising to me. But I'm not in the shoes of them, so they probably know more than I do. Then we get to the Pats game, right? Going into the this week, the Pats held the number 1 pick in the overall pick in the draft. They controlled their destiny, and just like the Giants last week. But they went out there and they won and lost the number 1 pick to Mitch Trubisky and the Buffaloes. They beat them. But that's not even the biggest story, them losing the number 1 pick. What was the biggest story this week? Joe Milton, okay? Wow. He went out there and he, I believe, started out like 10 for 10, 11 for 11, whatever the case may have been. But he was showing out. He was wheeling and dealing. He was showing off his accuracy, which was the big question going into his pre-draft analysis and everything. And through the combine, everybody was saying he's got the arm strength, he's got these intangibles, he's got the size, prototypical size, like similar to an Anthony Richardson. And he's got all these great things going for him, but his accuracy is going to be off, even though he can launch that ball like crazy. He was showing off a lot of his pocket escapability. Obviously, the accuracy concerns, moot now. Pocket escapability, insane. A lot of what we expect a guy like Anthony Richardson should be. I remember, he was showing off a lot of great read progression, awareness in the pocket. I remember there was this one play that ended up getting called back because there was a flag as well as there was a drop, but it was like third and long, and he was feeling the pressure coming in. He was going through his reads. He didn't see anything. He basically escaped 1, 2, 3 pressures, and going off to the sideline, he spins out of the pressure on the sideline, and he's drifting, rolling, launches it just before going out of bounds to a Javon Baker who is heavily covered in the end zone, and catches it. It looked like a catch. It ended up getting called back because I believe it was a drop, and I believe there was a flag. But that was an insane play, and he just showed off a lot of what you want to see in a young rookie quarterback. And even though it was week 18, the guy can play football. You cannot take that away from him. And so now here's the conundrum you're in if you're a Pats fan or if you're in the Pats front office, because Gerard Mayo just got fired, right? And I can discuss that more because that's a whole other tangent in itself. I'll discuss that more when I go over the Jets game. But Gerard Mayo is fired, and so Joe Milton now, you can see that he can play football. So as a next head coach, where you don't have a guy that you've already established is your guy, you drafted these two guys in the draft, and there's a decision to be made here, a legitimate decision, even though it was Week 18 performance, if in my opinion. I've had this opinion since the draft happened, but I think you should give Joe Milton an absolute shot at the starting position. I don't think Drake May's job is safe. And as a new head coach coming in, where you want to establish who's going to be your guy moving forward with your schemes, you should definitely give Joe Milton a shot versus Drake May, in my opinion. Drake May has shown his own flashes of brilliance, obviously. So I'm not taking anything away from Drake May and how good he's been this year, especially as a guy who can scramble. But we've seen that Joe Milton can do that as well. And I think the biggest case for Joe Milton's argument over Drake May to be the starter is that he's shown what Drake May hasn't. He has accomplished a feat that Drake May hasn't, at least in Week 18. And it was being on the same page as the Pats receiver room. He was absolutely on timing when it came to certain comeback routes, especially that came back, and making something out of nothing when it mattered the most. And especially just going through those quick reads and quick read progressions in the pocket as well. He was 100% on the same page as all of these Pats receivers, which is something that Drake May has struggled to show over the course of the season, in my opinion. Now, the other thing would be that you have to weigh those against each other if you're the Pats' next head coach. So a lot to think about here. I think Joe Milton's got a lot of great character traits to his abilities and everything, and so I think there's definitely a discussion to be had. He got Kayshon Boutte to over 100 receiving yards, which is something that the Pats hadn't actually accomplished in 15 games. I can't remember if that was when Jacoby Brissett was still starting, but in 15 games, with Drake May being the starter, they have not accomplished a 100 receiving yard game to any of the receivers. Joe Milton was able to do it in his first week with Kayshon Boutte, who has been your breakout star in the receiver room this year. And he was also on great time with Pop Douglas, too. So we love to see that. Okay, then we get to the Jets game, which is my second to last game analysis to talk about. But Aaron Rodgers, you have pissed me off for the last time. I'm a Jets fan, as everybody should know. He had a vintage game with Devontae Adams, which once again ruined our draft pick in a meaningless game in Week 18. And now he's puffing up his chest talking about alluding to a potential return, blowing smoke in the press conferences, when all you've done so far is ruin our draft positioning by dropping 32 points against Tyler Huntley and co. Okay, I want you gone, and that's the end of the story. I'm tired of wasting Garrett Wilson's time, Breece Hall's time, Sauce Gardner's time, Quinnen Williams' time. All of these young core pieces that are super, super talented and could benefit from a young mobile quarterback that will grow with them. Aaron Rodgers is wasting all of that time has wasted 2 years of their time. One with the injury, which obviously I'm not going to blame him for. It's not his fault. But two, with what he's done this year in terms of fracturing the relationship we've had with our front office, coaches, players. He's had rumors of a grudge with Garrett Wilson against each other during dating all the way back to training camp. And it's just time to move on because we can't afford to lose Garrett Wilson or a guy like that who will force their way out with another year of betting on Aaron Rodgers, and he's going to fall short potentially, and he just blames everybody but himself in the process. And now, love this as a Jets fan. To put the icing on the cake, we now see the head coaching frenzy going on. Like I said, Gerard Mayo got fired yesterday, which I think is personally incredibly unfair because he was given a terrible position and what he was expected to do because of Pat's media pressure, Pat's fan base pressure, because they're incredibly impatient, in my opinion. He was given a terrible situation and expected to do better than what he's done. Expected to what? What were they expecting? To compete? I'm not sure. But to fire him when I feel like he's just simply being scapegoated when he was handpicked by Robert Kraft to succeed Bill Belichick, that's incredibly irresponsible of the Pats front office, and I think that it's a terrible way to handle his situation, especially when you're willing and dealing in bad faith. Mike Vrabel allegedly changed his profile picture the day before, so Saturday, the day before Gerard Mayo got fired, allegedly changed his profile picture on Twitter to a Patriots profile picture, which is there tampering going on? Potentially, but this was the day after, basically, that he had an interview for the Jets head coaching gig, and now we're hearing reports about the fact that was that all a smokescreen, even though we heard mutually from both parties that it was a great interview and that excited to potentially evaluate other options in comparison to that. But we're hearing that was all a smokescreen for Vrabel to entice the Pats to move it along in terms of firing Gerard Mayo and giving him a shot. So if Vrabel ends up becoming the head coach of the Patriots, we definitely need to investigate something as it pertains to tampering. But maybe I'm kind of waffling here about that, and I'm basically just speculating at this point. But that's what it looks like. And call a spade. We got to look at what it looks like for now until we hear more. But there's now a head coaching frenzy going on with the Jets, and this puts fuel to the fire in terms of my point. The Jets are basically looking at all their options as it comes to head coach, and they're scheduling interviews like crazy. One of them being Aaron Glenn, which at this point I think is our best option, defensive coordinator. Another one being Rex Ryan, which doesn't appear to be a huge popular option for amongst Jets fans, what I've heard. I think it would be great personally. What we need more than anything is a leader to go in there and essentially, put all the cards on the table and say, hey, I'm going to lead you to victory, or I'm going to lead you to at least fight like crazy. And I'm not going to take shit from anybody, basically, especially as it pertains to so-called star players or franchise players, such as Rodgers, for example. And this is evidenced by the fact that today I saw a report that on ESPN New York talk radio, Rex Ryan went on there and basically said he believes that he's the right choice for the job, which he said many times before, but he believes that if he goes into his Tuesday interview, he will come out there and they will hire him. And he vows that if he's the head coach, he will end this whole Rogers Country Club business going on, which yes, a million times yes, I'm for. And that makes me like him a whole lot more as a candidate, because that's what we needed the entirety of the season. We need somebody to go in there, lead the team, take care of business, and change the culture, which is certainly what he'd do. But of course, I'd like Aaron Glenn, I'd like these different guys, and I'd like several different coaching and GM combinations. I have my priorities in terms of that. If you want to hear more about those, I could talk all day about it, and I could make a separate video about it. But for now, I'll move on. Last thing was the Lions in Sunday Night Football showed us that they're undoubtedly the favorite to come out of the NFC as far as competing for a Super Bowl and contending for a Super Bowl. They had a dominant 31-9 performance over the Vikings, in which the Vikings were heavily considered as by a lot of people as the second best team. And this came off the back of a Jahmyr Gibbs masterclass. Congratulations to him. He performed really well going into the playoffs, and they locked up that number 1 seed. Now, to echo my opinion that I said from the other last video about the Viking situation, are you guys really sure that you want to go with Sam Darnold? You want to bet all in on Sam Darnold, trade J.J. McCarthy away for whatever you can, and you want to invest all your chips in Sam Darnold. Are we sure about this? Because, and obviously we'll see what happens in the playoffs, but if you trade McCarthy away and he ends up becoming something, which is a definite probability, or probable outcome that might happen, and you don't win anything with Sam Darnold as a result, with the talent that you have on this roster, you're not going to hear the end of it till the end of time from so many people, not just Vikings fans. So are you guys sure? Let me know in the comments if you're a Vikings fan. Are y'all sure you want to put all your chips in with Darnold? We'll see what he does in the playoffs, though. So that wraps up game-by-game analysis. Just talking about the week, we now have our playoff bracket completely set, which I'll show y'all right now. Okay, so here we go. We've got and I'll do a whole video, basically, a separate video on breaking down exactly what I think prediction-wise is going to happen. Kicking off on January 11th, we're going to have the Texans versus Chargers at the 4 and 5 seed, obviously with the Chiefs locking in the number 1 seed with the bye. I believe, actually, I won't go into my predictions because they'll be saved for another video. Then we got the Ravens and Steelers, Bills and Broncos. And then out in the NFC, we've got the Lions locking up the number 1 seed, Rams and Vikings in the first round, Buccaneers and Commanders. That should be a really exciting game. And the Eagles and the Packers. Let me know in the comments who y'all think are going to win each of these round 1 matchups. I'll take y'all's opinions into account as I'm preparing my prediction video. Then we also had the NFL draft order set. So that was really cool. To see all that unfold, and we've got the Titans with the number 1 pick and potentially the eventual Travis Hunter draft team, and then we have the Cleveland Browns following them and the Giants. And if you're the Giants, you're extremely happy about, especially the Patriots winning to ruin their positioning, because not only did the Patriots lose the number 1 pick, you're in a position where you end up with either Shadur, Cam Ward, or Travis Hunter. Seems like a really good position to be in, especially because you aren't having to deal with the conflict of choice in that situation. The Patriots follow at 4. Will they go for Will Campbell? Will they go for Ted McMillan? Will they go for Mason Graham? That remains to be seen, but they'll have their pick of the litter after the top 3 go out. Jacksonville Jaguars following them. Las Vegas Raiders following them. And then my Jets at number 7. Rounding out the top 10, you've got Carolina at 8, New Orleans Saints at 9, and Chicago at 10. Then you have the rest to follow. So, of course, after bowl season, I'll do my first ever official first round mock draft. Maybe I'll even do 2 rounds. But, as it remains to be seen, we'll see how the draft shakes out. So, that was my summary of the crazy NFL Week 18. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like. Also, let me know in the comments, what do you think about the Vikings situation? What do you think about the Jets head coaching situation? What's your opinion on the quarterback battle that might ensue based off Joe Milton and Drake May, both performing super well? And what's y'all's thoughts about how the draft order shook out? But yeah, also make sure to subscribe. And follow me on all socials in the description down below. I do a lot of my instant, immediate thoughts and opinions and reactions on Twitter, so make sure you follow me down there. All right, peace.